What's up, Bollystars? My name is Shiksha, aka Bollygirl, and I'll be your host today. Now, today's guest is none other than Megha Desai, the president of the Desai Foundation. That's right, they focus on empowering women and children in India and the US, focusing on community programs to help elevate their health and their livelihood. Are you excited to go talk to her? Because I sure am. Let's go do this. Thank you so much for being with us here today, Megha.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
So you actually started in advertising, and you were in that space for what, 10 years?
A little over, yeah, a little under 15 years actually, yeah.
And now you're like the head of this nonprofit organization that's doing incredible work, which I want to talk a little bit more, obviously going to be talking more about. What, brought on that transition?
Yeah, absolutely. I was working in advertising for over a decade. I enjoyed it, but there was just always something missing. I felt like there was something around my values and around just what it meant to be working like a 90-hour week and feeling like all I did that day was sell soda water. And for some people that works, and I have no judgment, but for me, it was just not feeling like it was tapping into every ounce of who I wanted to be and who I wanted to grow into. And so I ultimately shifted to running a small marketing firm where I was working with startups and impact brands. And that was starting to feel a little bit more like on the right track.
Right.
And then this job kind of was a little bit of an accident and happened a little, like kind of surprisingly. And so I took it on thinking it was going to be a temporary job. And that was 7 years ago.
That's incredible. So it kind of just happened. It was the universe saying, this is where you need to be.
Exactly.
Now, the Desai Foundation focuses on these community programs. Am I correct?
Yep.
In India and in the US?
Yes.
Okay.
Primarily in India, but yes.
Okay.
So what we focus on is working with women and children in rural communities, and we work in 3 verticals. So we develop and execute programs around health, which is our first vertical, so health access, vision screenings, and gynac camps, et cetera, et cetera. Second vertical is around vocational training and entrepreneurship, so putting women to work so that they can have their own agency and their own dignity and cultivate dignity for themselves. And the third vertical is menstrual equity, is to ensure that girls and women have the tools that they need to live long, healthy lives. And so that is the 3 verticals in which we work in 8 states in rural India.
Wow. So when you started working with the Desai Foundation, is this what they were already doing and you just helped grow it? Or were you part of that, creating that?
The Desai Foundation was originally a family foundation that converted into a public one, which is kind of an unusual move. But basically what had happened was that the founding family was building and building and building these prototypes, like these most viable products. And by the end, they discovered that they had around 15 of them. And so in order to scale and impact more people, we converted to a public foundation.
Okay.
So back then, they were focused on health and livelihood. And we had just begun our journey into menstrual equity when I joined. And I think my contribution to the programming itself has been editing, refining, and making them scalable.
That's really interesting because it sounds like you're attacking the root of the problem, right? In these places. Because by helping them with their livelihood, for example, then they can help themselves versus just going in and being the hero for a day and leaving.
Exactly,
right?
Exactly. And that's why we actually don't do, unless there's a time of crisis, like during the pandemic, we did do like distribution of food and things like that, but generally that is not what we do. We're really there to help them build the fundamental building blocks of living prosperous, healthy, dignified lives.
That's really cool. So now you really focus on cultivating dignity, right? That's your thing, is cultivating dignity. Can you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, so I'm gonna explain that by telling you a story.
Okay.
So we work with a woman, and we're just gonna give her a name here. We're gonna call her Shruti. She took a sewing class with one of our programs. And I happened to be in India about 4 months after she'd started the class. When she began, I met her there, and then I saw her when I returned, and I did not recognize her at all. This woman, when I first met her, was covering her head, was not standing up straight, would never look me in the eye. And when I met her just 4 months later, she was wearing this bright yellow sari, had her head no longer covered, and had bangs. And I was just thinking to myself, like, who is this woman? And then she came right up to me, looked me straight in the eye, and was like, Megha madam, it's Shruti. And I just remember my head exploding and being like, what? This cannot be the same woman.
Yeah.
And so I sat her down and I had tea with her and I was talking to her about how this program made such a drastic transformation in just 4 months on her life. And the reason that she was taking the class wasn't because she was actually trying to earn that much more money. Earning some money was important to her. But for her, getting out of the house and connecting with other women was so important. Some of these women, you know, they go from their father's homes to their husbands' homes, and their lives are controlled by their mother-in-laws or their husbands, and they don't really get to have friends.
Yeah.
And they don't get to have conversations that say like, oh, like my mother-in-law is not supposed to hit me, or I'm supposed to be able to interact with my friends, or I'm supposed to be able to have agency in a private conversation. And because she was doing the sewing program and she felt so good about herself because she made the best blouse on the block, she suddenly was visible and was able to really cultivate dignity for herself.
Yeah.
And so, yes, she learned a skill. Yes, she was earning a little bit more money. But the metric that I care about is the transformation and the dignity that she has now, because that's going to make her a better mother, a better member of society, and just she's going to be a happier person.
Wow.
And so that's what we mean by cultivating dignity. And that expresses itself across all 3 of our programs. And so that's why it's so important to me.
That's so cool. You're making them feel good about themselves.
Exactly.
And like we said, bettering their lives
Exactly.
in different ways.
Yeah.
But how do you, like, you know, measure that? And I know you've been asked this before, but I'd love for, you know, our audience to know this as well.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, how do you measure something like that?
It's very difficult to quantify, but
Yeah.
it's very easy to qualify.
Yeah.
And so don't get me wrong, we collect lots and lots of quantitative data. And I have numbers that show, you know, how much money women are earning or how much longer they stayed in school or et cetera, et cetera. But for us, because we spend so much time on the ground, because we don't leave communities right after a program, we're out there, we're monitoring, we're watching. And so our team gets to know the people that we serve, and that's how we measure. And so I'll give you an example of where the program didn't have the affected impact. So like, just to give you both sides. So during the pandemic, we launched this hotline. And we thought that because people can't leave their house, they could pick up the phone and have all their questions answered around COVID or this or that. Where can I get my closest vaccine? You know, how do I know if I need a test, etc. And what was so interesting is watching how the program didn't really have the intended impact. And the reason it didn't have the intended impact is because it was just not a mechanism they were used to, right? These women in rural communities are just not used to like picking up a phone and calling and asking for help. Right. So the program really didn't have the intended effect. And so we're able to admit like, hey, we tried something, it didn't work, let's move on. Especially in times of crisis where you have to be inventive and think of how things work and what the community really needs. And so, you know, we're not afraid to try things, even if they fail. But at the end of the day, we're always thinking about the end consumer. We're always thinking about the people we serve. And if the programs don't truly serve them, then the program isn't doing its job.
Well, that must have been a challenge during the pandemic because now you're suddenly stuck to doing things virtually. And in some villages, they don't do things virtually. So how did you overcome that?
Yeah, so our women are incredible, the people we serve. They are innovative, they are creative, and they are smart. And one of the things that we did was we had already trained some 10,000 women to sew at that point before the pandemic hit.
God.
And so what we did was we called them. And we said, hey, if we drop off a machine at your house and a bag of fabric, and if we WhatsApp you a video of how we want the masks to be made, and we pay you to make these masks, will you sew masks? And our team would go out and pick them up as they were done. And the women in these villages made 1.5 million masks that were then distributed to other needy communities that needed masks. It is this type of innovation and curiosity and just passion that these women have. So despite the fact that we were not able to be as, you know, we weren't able to gather women to do classes and stuff, we were actually still working the whole way through the pandemic.
Yeah, I'm sure. I
Yeah.
mean, especially with the way things were happening in India,
Yes.
as we know. Wow, that's incredible, though.
Yeah.
You do some work in the U.S. as well.
Mhm.
So I'm curious as to what the differences are that you've seen in regards to your programs and things like that.
Our work in America is really focused around entrepreneurship and women's
Okay.
health. And so we work with, and community development. So since we're in New York, our longest running program is actually up in Harlem in Morningside Heights. We work with a community there called Community Impact. And I actually am a product of this program. This is why I know it so well. It's up at Columbia University.
Okay.
And it takes the students from the university and deploys them into the community to volunteer. And so I taught English for 4 years when I was in college, and we loved that model so much that we actually brought that model to India. So we work with a couple of different communities in Rajasthan and in Gujarat, where we're working with the local university to deploy the students there to help build some of our programming.
Wow.
Yeah, so I think that the programming really kind of feeds each other.
Yeah, it's interesting. Now, you're also working towards breaking the stigma on periods and talking about your periods and menstruation and all of that. So what started this problem,
Yes.
in your opinion?
Well, I think when I was first out in the villages, one of the things I was really struck by was how I would never see girls at school, and I kept being like, where are the girls? And ultimately, when I really understood deeply the multitude of reasons why girls don't go to school, and this is, about 15 years ago, I was able to start really hearing, it wasn't just that, oh, they're not allowed to, or this and that. There were these other things like, well, they can't because they don't have a way to manage their menstrual cycles. Because a lot of these public schools in India and rural communities don't have toilets at all. So how is a girl gonna manage her period, even if she has the means and has the education?
Right.
But since 71% of girls in India don't know what their period is until the day they get it, that education on how to maintain our periods in a healthy way isn't happening. And so what ends up happening is this compounding interest of problems, right? You're not staying in school, therefore you're not getting the education that you need to even manage your period healthily, but then also pull yourself out of poverty. Then when you're in the working world, you can't hold a job down because you can't manage your period.
Right, yeah.
And then also the health issues that are happening, right?
Yeah.
If you're using rags or leaves to manage your period, the rate of infection is so high.
Yeah.
And so, I have all of the facilities at my disposal here in the United States. I work in menstrual health, and let me tell you, every time I get my period, it's still kind of a surprise. And you still kind of feel like, oh God, do I have the things I need? Do I, And so if we
You're still
feel
in
that
pain
way,
and like,
exactly.
ugh.
And
Yeah.
if we feel that way, how is it that they're managing, and how is it that with the resources that they have available to them? So for us, it's really important that we attack this problem, again, with a lot of dignity. So the pads that we make and distribute by the women that we serve are retail quality pads. They are not big, thick, uncomfortable pads. They are retail quality pads. And the program attacks all three of the issues. So one is around awareness and education, so just like basic health information around menstruation. Second is the stigmas and breaking the barriers around what you can and cannot do. I grew up in a very modern house, and still in my house, my grandmother was horrified that I prayed when I was bleeding.
That's a thing.
And so that would even be here, like in the States.
Still, yeah.
And then the third is around distribution and access. So making sure that women feel comfortable. I don't know if you've ever tried to buy pads in India, but I just remember about a decade ago going to the bodega across the street from my grandmother's house in Bombay. And this is Bombay, the most progressive city in the country. And at the time they used to keep them behind the front desk. So you have to interact with a male store clerk, right? And then they put it in a bag, they put it in another bag. Like, I was like, guys, I'm not getting, this is not a drug deal here. This is just menstrual pads. And so, why is it that we can't seem to just, like, this is something every day that we all need.
Right.
And so even just that is a barrier. So imagine a girl has all the education she has, she even has the money she needs, but just that barrier of having to interact with the store clerk.
So uncomfortable.
So, what we do is we sell our pads door to door at a highly subsidized rate, made by the women, distributed by the women.
Okay.
So it's a full ecosystem.
Have you seen the movie Padman?
Of course.
Okay, what'd you think of that movie though?
Any national conversation around menstruation is a great conversation around menstruation. I understand that Bollywood is a male-dominated industry, and so I wish that a woman spoke for more than 11% of the movie, because it is a women's issue, and it is a men's issue too. I am very, very happy that people participated in the film, but I really want to have more women voicing have their voices be heard in issues that mainly concern them.
Did you see the movement that came with that movie though?
Absolutely. I know the gentleman behind the movie. We met with him. We'd worked with him.
Okay.
We ultimately went with a different manufacturing company.
Okay.
But listen, I think it's so incredible, his passion and what he did and the conversation that he started, and we are forever grateful for him and for what he has built. I think my commentary was more on like the Bollywood industry.
No, yeah. No, but you know, speaking on the Bollywood industry, as a result of the movie and in regards to promotion and things like that, all the Bollywood actors started posting pictures with a pad on social media, which I don't think has ever been done before. And it's like, and you had men and women doing it.
Absolutely.
Which I personally thought was really cool.
Hugely important. Hugely important.
Yeah, it started the conversation.
Absolutely.
So do you think that Bollywood, Tollywood, the entertainment industry has that kind of power to change the conversation?
Absolutely. They've always had that power to change the conversation. There's two ends of that spectrum, right? The conversation needs to change out in the world, and then it also needs to change at home.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, I think that's a harder conversation to change. For me, that's really, we're really out in these rural villages talking to mothers and daughters together, you know, trying to change that conversation at home. But 100% changing the conversation inside the entertainment industry is so important.
Well, because of the influence that the entertainment industry has, even, especially in India.
Especially,
right?
yes.
They really, they have that kind of power. I know recently there's an inhaler challenge that's going around to talk about how having an inhaler is okay.
Oh,
and
from
Madhuri
an
Dixit
asthma,
posted. Yeah, exactly.
From an asthma perspective. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, love
right?
that.
It's pretty cool because at least we're starting the conversations regarding health and things like that.
I love that.
Yeah. So now, in regards to all of the programs and all your work, you have different events that you host. For these things, and the money goes towards these programs.
That's correct. Yep, we have two main events. We have Diwali on the Hudson, which is on Wednesday of this coming week in New York City. And we have the Lotus Festival, which is like our more formal gala in Boston. Okay. That we hosted last Saturday, actually at Foxborough Stadium in Massachusetts. And Diwali on the Hudson is coming on this Wednesday, the 13th, or the 12th of October.
Yes. Can you tell us a little bit more about what that event looks like and how people can join in?
Yes. So this is our 9th year hosting Diwali on the Hudson.
Yes.
You know, it's funny, when we first started doing this event, there were very few people throwing Diwali parties, and now I feel like it's a huge industry of Diwali parties.
Original Diwali party.
Yes. And we are so excited about having everyone back this year.
Yeah.
Event is super fun. It's not a sit-down gala. It is really very much a fun event. People get really dressed up and really into it. We always have incredible artists join us. This year we have the awesome Rhea Raj joining us, and she's actually going to be performing her huge hit outside. The TikTok, like literally 15 million, and that was yesterday, views of Outside, and she'll be performing it for the first time ever at the Diwali on the Hudson.
Oh,
so I'm really excited about that.
That's really cool.
And then because it's our 25th anniversary, there will be some other surprises. But I can't tell you. You just gotta come and check it out.
Give us a hint,
a
little bit.
It's like, a music legend.
Who?
I can't tell you.
Oh, snap. Okay, guys, you're just gonna have to attend this party if you're in New York. Come on out to the Diwali party. What kind of programs and things are you currently working on, maybe piloting? For the months to come?
Yeah, so right now we're really focused on the existing 30 programs that we have in these three verticals around health, livelihood, and menstrual equity. One of the programs that we launched during the pandemic was called Heroes for Humanity. It was this incredible deployment program where we were able to reach so many more villages by hiring local folks from the rural communities, training them and deploying them to deliver the services that that they needed. And I'm very proud of the fact that we've been able to pivot from that immediate COVID need to our programming. So instead of going out and doing COVID tests, they're out giving diabetes tests, whatever the case may be. So we were able to kind of extend it and extend the impact of that program. So we're really grateful to our partners at SP Hinduja Bank, who have really supported this whole program. And it's really allowed us to reach millions more.
Wow, so you guys are spreading. You said you were in
2,500 villages, 8 states.
Whoa, okay, that's a lot. How do you keep up with all of that? That's a lot.
I mean, it's the job.
Sure.
But and I also go and visit. So I'm there a lot. We take cues from the folks on the ground. I recognize that I'm an ABCD and I live here in America, and I never pretend to know what the solutions are that they need on the ground.
Has that been a challenge for you, being an ABCD?
Not really. I think it's the reason it hasn't been a challenge for me is because I know my experience is different. And I also know that my job is to just listen and problem solve.
Yeah.
And when you know that that is your job, it doesn't become a problem because you're able to just sit there and say, okay, you explain the problem to me. Let's figure out the best way to solve the problem.
Yeah.
Let's experiment with a couple different ways to do it.
Yeah.
And then let's take feedback from the community and make those adjustments.
Yeah, because they ultimately know what's best for them, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. What would you say is like the most goosebump-worthy moment that you've had?
Oof.
Yeah.
Oh my God, too many. I had one recently.
Okay.
When I was there in April, I was in Orissa for the first time, and we drove out hours into this rural community, and I watched. So the heroes that we hired in Orissa originally, because it's a slightly more traditional community, we couldn't get women to hire and like sign on right away. So first we had a bunch of men sign on, and then a bunch of women ultimately felt more comfortable,
okay.
which is fine.
Yeah.
And I watched a man, one of our heroes, give a menstrual health seminar to rural villages, to rural women in a tiny, tiny village sitting outside under a tree. It moved me because they were so engaged, they were so happy, they understood. He was very comfortable, they were very comfortable. And it was just one of those moments where I was like, wow, like the programming we've built is so translatable and ubiquitous and effective that I'm in a place I've never been watching a man deliver an MHM program, and it really moved me. I was really taken away.
So cool.
Yeah.
The change is coming.
Exactly.
Basically.
Yeah, and he was so proud. He was like, I'm very proud to do this work. I underestimated the community, you know, that it would happen that fast.
Wow. Is there some way that our audience or myself, we can help with your foundation?
Absolutely. So first and foremost, come to the Valley on the Hudson.
Yes.
And also follow us on the socials because we're always doing other unusual things. In the month of May, we host something called Pledge Your Period. So how you had mentioned that you were seeing all these Bollywood stars hold up pads. Every year we have a different challenge. Last year the challenge was to show yourself breaking a stigma of the period of menstruation. Both men and women and non-binaries can participate in this program.
Okay.
And so we encourage everyone to join along. And so that's in the month of May. It's called Pledge Your Period. But you can just follow us at the Desai Foundation and check out our work. Obviously, we always can use donations.
Yes.
All of the donations that come into the Desai Foundation are matched 100%. So your $5 donation becomes 10, your $100 donation becomes 200.
Wow.
And all of that work goes to programming on the ground. So that is the way that we've set up our organization, and we're very lucky to have board members that support our overhead. And so we feel really proud about the efficacy that you can feel good about an investment with the Desai Foundation.
Well, thank you so much for talking with us here today.
Thank you for having me.
Incredible.
This is wonderful.
Yeah, and just thank you for everything that you do.
Thank you.
And please don't stop because you're amazing.
Thank you.
So, yeah.
It's a real honor to do this work, and I'm made aware of that by every single day by the people I serve and by the community of you, right? All of the community that supports our work, that sees our work. And that comes visit our work. If you're in India, let us know. Come visit our work.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you guys. Thanks, guys. Hi, I'm Megha Desai, and I'm talking to Bollygirl.